Okay, yesterday we learned in the Dvar Malchut that there's these two Torah portions that we're reading. When the Rebbe was speaking, they were reading them together. It was one long Torah portion, but we read it one week after the other. But the message is still there. So Metzora means a leper, and that hints at the Mashiach. And Tazria, that refers to the Jewish people planting the redemption. Redemption. So the Rebbe said, why is it that that the Mashiach is called a leper? It says, well, he suffers for our sins and he suffers, but nevertheless, okay, but still, it's not nice calling him a leper just because of that. He's supposed to redeem. He redeems the Jews, helps everybody. It's calling him a leper. That's not nice. Also, the same thing here. The way that the Torah portions go, it's Tazria first, which is the Jews planting the redemption, and Metzora, and then the Mashiach. It should be the other way around. Mashiach comes first, and then there's the redemption. And not only that, the Mashiach is a bad thing, and the Jews are a good thing. So they plant. So it doesn't sort of make any sense. Why is it in this proper, seemingly improper order? So Tazria means the Jews plant. They may grow like Tzemach David. That's the redemption. So the redemption, that's supposed to come second, but we see that Tazria comes first. So the whole thing seems to be mixed up. Okay. Right. And why is the Mashiach called a Metzora? All right. Daled. Why is the Mashiach called a leper of all things? Daled. Yuvan will understand, first of all, let's understand what is this thing of this Torah leprosy. Like I said before, leprosy is the wrong word. It's not the right word, but for lack of a better word, so they use the word leprosy. Again, what was Metzora? Metzora was a very severe type of impurity, spiritual impurity. If you sat in a room where there was a person that was a leper, you became impure. You didn't even have to touch the person. It's like a dead body. A leper is almost the same law as a dead body. What is a person that's a leper? What's a leper? It's not a physical disease. It's not caused by germs or by bacteria or anything. It says it's caused by speaking bad, saying negative things about people. Lashon hora, it's called. Lashon hora, that brings sorat. It doesn't exist anymore. This disease does not exist in a regular way anymore, right? If it did, I don't know if anybody would not be leper. Anyway, so it doesn't exist. But when it did exist, how did you know somebody was a leper? So there was a discoloration on the skin, especially a white color. And interestingly enough, it says that if a person's whole body turns white, then he was pure. But if there was one blotch of white somewhere, then that was a sign that he was impure. They had to go to the Kohen, and the Kohen would examine him and say, you're impure. As soon as the Kohen said you're impure, the person was impure. If he didn't say it, then the person was not impure. Interesting. But as soon as the Kohen says you're impure, says it, then he's impure. And there's different criteria. It has to be a white blotch with a black hair coming from it. There's several different types of tzorat, but that's generally the principle, tzorat. Okay, but it's a bad thing. You have to be separate from the whole camp. It's impurity, a very severe impurity. And the Mashiach is called the Metzora. Says the Mashiach is sitting, Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi was sitting in the gates of Rome, and he was sitting with all the lepers, with all the Metzoraim, all the people. Okay, so what's this going on? Let's first of all understand, what is this thing of Tzorat? What is the thing of Negaim? Negaim also means Tzorat. Negaim. Allah Pasuk, it says in the sentence, Adam ki or basaro, a man, if there is in the skin of his flesh, negat tzoras, it says the plague of spiritual leprosy. Mavur explains in the Kuti Torah that Adam got, maybe we'll learn this starting tomorrow. Adam hu b'medrega gadol. Adam is referring to a very high level. Adam, that's how the sentence starts. A man, when he has in his flesh a negatzoras, it also applies to women also. Adam is in general. But there's a lot of different terms for man. One of them is enosh, one of them is gever. Adam is the highest term for man. It explains that Adam, that's why the first man was called Adam, who was the highest of all. Perfect man. Who, b'medrega gadola, is a very high level. Lafi, because who shlema de kula. This is, man includes everything. Wholeness, completion of all. Adam hazeh, this man, kishem machshirim masav, a person, when his deeds are good, and he fixes up everything that he should, yochal yos, nevertheless, there still can be ba'or basaro. So this is Adam. Adam is talking about the perfection of man. Adam. So Adam, a man, when he's perfect, when there is in his skin this blemish, a perfect man, what would he have a blemish of tzarat for? Why? Adam. Was he says there can be, because there can be a little bit, but or basaro, just in his external, in the skin of his flesh, the most insignificant part of the person, lonisbar, maybe the little bit that has not been refined, his selfishness. But pasolos mimeno, and the dregs from it, noldim simanim gashmim basaro. Behem and Negoim, that's called Negoim. So it could be that a person, like, for instance, it says in the Tanya that there's tens of thousands of levels of tzaddikim. So there's a perfect tzaddik, 100% pure, but then there's also other levels of tzaddikim that they're called tzaddikim. And it could be they have a little tiny bit, maybe a little bit of jealousy, maybe a little bit of impatience, and something, because Baruchni is spiritually in the service of God. Tikkun, can be a Jew, that he fixed up everything. He took away all the bad from the good, and everything. This is refining the bad from his body and from his soul. Just a little tiny bit of egotism, of selfishness or bad in the outside of his garments is still not refined. Therefore, there is in the outside of his flesh a sign that something is wrong. So it's like you have a perfect car or something like that, but nevertheless, there's all these lights that go on, that there's a little something, your rear, the part reverse light or something is wearing out. The car is worth $15 million, but it has all these lights to show you there's some little minor thing not right. You want to have a perfect 100%. The same thing is, there's sometimes a Jew, our job is, God put us in a world, and that we're supposed to, as much as possible, refine ourselves and refine the world. Get rid of the lies and the negative things. So it could be that we've rid of ourselves. There can be a person that's rid of himself of everything bad, and he's perfect. So he thinks. So God sends him a little sign and says, listen, there's still a little bit you got to fix up. You know, I'm trying to help you. I'm doing the best. A little bit you get. It's not even in his flesh, in his muscles of a person. It's something that's wrong. It just comes to show you that there's something very external. The sign comes not in his flesh that can be added on by eating and drinking, etc., and the blood flows through it, but just on the outside of his skin. Chitzonius mamakiv, the outside of his skin, there's a little blemish. Ba'or basaro, gufo. It's an Adam yiyeh ba'or basaro. That's what it means. A man, the perfect example, perfect man, a perfect man, but he has ba'or basaro on the external. He's got a little tiny blemish. Haini she'ein davar regil. This is not common. Ela mikra. It's just once in a while he loses his temper, once every 20 years or something. And yet a regil. But gam az, nevertheless, harizerak, it's a negatzoras. It just touches. Nega means it just touches on impurity, but it's impure. This thing which is not good, it's not relevant, not even to really to his external, it just touches, negable, it just touches him. Okay, but nevertheless, it's a fault. And it's coming to tell him that, fix it up. If you're a sincere person and you want to fix up every imperfection that you've got. The Od Ve'ikr, and the main thing is, Kafi Shemosiv, like it says in the Kuti Torah, the Gam Negoim. Also, the fact is that this leprosy is really a very high thing. She'enu Nikra Tame, it's not called Tame until he comes to the Kohen. He has to come to the Kohen and tell him that he's impure. What's the law? A person that's impure with tzorat, with this leprosy, anything he touches becomes impure. If he's in a room, he's impure, but only if the Kohen says he's impure. Even if there's an expert that looks at him and says, you've got all the signs of impurity, and the person is a tremendous Talmid Chacham, he's a genius, and he knows all the laws, and he says, listen, this is all the signs of impurity, right? You are impure. He's not impure. He has to bring the Kohen, and the Kohen, even if it's a child that doesn't even know the laws, it has to be a Kohen. And the Kohen and the expert will say, listen, see this is a sign that he's impure. Say you are impure. Say these words. Say you are impure. You are impure. And from that moment, he's impure. He had all the signs according to science, according to reality, according to Torah, according to everything. He was impure, but the Kohen didn't say those words. So he's not impure. This shows that what? That before the Kohen says it, not only are they not impure, exactly the opposite. This is a sign from God, the essence of God, to come and fix yourself up. So it's very, very high things. It says it's very, very severe aspects of God, very precise aspects of godliness. It's very, very high, very, very holy. I just saw recently a violinist, one of the greatest violinists I think that ever lived, maybe the greatest. His name was, what was the Yehudi Menuhin, I guess, Yehudi Menuhin. And he was a fantastic, fantastic violinist, just amazing violinist. And, people would go to him to learn. That's wrong. So the people that would go to him to learn were fantastic violinists. I mean, these were like world violinists, right? But they would go to him to find a little tiny imperfection. Maybe there was some little tiny thing that their vibrato wasn't right or whatever. A little tiny imperfection. So it came very, very high. This Yehudi Menuhin was like the expert of the experts. He was especially gifted. Don't think I'm an expert in this stuff. I just learned a little bit about it. But anyways, he was like the expert's expert. So it was super high. So, but nevertheless, he told them there was wrong things. So it's the same thing. It's like the Havdil, from the essence of God, is coming down to this person who's trying to be perfect. He's saying, listen, everyone says you're perfect. You know you're perfect. I'm telling you, you've got a little imperfection. It's coming from a very, very high place. And so this is coming, it's high, very high lights. That's what the little sign is, and that God is sending a sign to us that, listen, you got something wrong, you have to fix up. How do we know it's coming from God? Because until a Kohen comes and says that it's impure, it's not impure. It's just a very high sign that something has to be fixed up. When the Kohen says it's impure, then it becomes impure. And then you really have to get serious about fixing it up. Came and says the Negoyim, they have really high, very high lights, high revelations of God. Therefore, when it comes down below, and there's something that's not right, by means of Yunika, that there's some sort of a nurture of your external forces, in other words, some sort of egotism, it's only an external thing, which is only relevant to the lowest of the low. The lowest and the most external things of yourself, but it's worth fixing up. And therefore, Kamatikun on this, also the fixing for this is not by means of a new thing totally, but by means of a revelation of Inyani Emiti. How do we revelate? How do we redeem and fix up the situation? by understanding that God personally himself is coming and trying to teach us a lesson of how to be perfect. Like it says, this is the law of the Metzora. That's next week's Torah portion. Metzora, on the day that he becomes pure. Torah, when he becomes pure, this is by means of yom, by means of day. She'enyano, it means or v'gilui, revelation. In other words, when we see what is really good, then it becomes clear to us what's bad. Revelation of highlights of these negayim, of these blemishes, and by means of this, misbadlin, yanika sechetzonim, everything becomes pure, pure. Even the most external things become pure and beautiful. Someone sent me another thing. I saw there's some fellow, I think in England or whatever, that his thing is he polishes up cars. And sometimes it takes like $5,000 to polish your car. Who would pay $5,000 to polish a car? I'll tell you who. People who have expensive cars, their car itself is worth, who knows, $1 million or whatever. And they want the car to be perfect. The car that they want their car to be perfectly clean and perfectly shiny and perfectly, wholesome and everything. And so he polishes the handle of the big front door. He polishes up the handles and the seats and the floor mats and the antenna, and he polishes with a special type of polish that he does it 7 times. And come on, what are you doing? What do you need a thing like that for? So the answer is I don't need a thing like that. I mean, I have a car. My car is worth, maybe in Israel, maybe it's worth $2,000. Could be. I doubt it greatly. Could be, right? A car, I care if it's hit. I care if somebody knocks into my car. It makes a big difference to me. What do I care? It makes no difference to me. But a guy who has a beautiful car, right, and you put a little scratch on that, he cares. And a guy that really has a really beautiful car, a really expensive car, as he's meshuggah for the car, he doesn't want one little thing to be wrong. He's willing to pay $7,000 for this car. And it could be he just leaves it in his garage. Right? Drives it once a week around the block or something like that. But it has to be perfect. That's the point. So, okay, the example maybe is a bad example, but here we're talking about God demands perfection, and he provides perfection for everybody. He wants us to be perfect. And if Adam wouldn't have eaten from the tree, which he did because of egotism, there wouldn't be this negative egotism in the world. And that's the way things are supposed to be. So we have to try. Experience also refines us. But we would like to be refined that we see a true, real world, right? Looking at the world from scratched glasses, right, is you see everything, but it's still scratched. So to remove every little scratch from our soul so that we see a perfect world and that we can use the reason why we're here, created in the world, every human being is a miracle, to use that miraculous power that we have to serve God. So we want to be without blemishes of our own egotism. And therefore God does us a big favor, and personally he sends these tzorat. Now, like I said, we don't have this anymore, but the Rebbe will explain how this is relevant to us now. But nevertheless, that's what it says. So let's explain this. The reason that it's possible, that there can be a nurture from external forces, that a person can be the opposite of pure, and thus he can be impure. The person can be 100% egotist. Oros Elyonim, the Negoyim Lamitatam, to their true revelation is Mipnei Gadol Milas Oros Elyonim, because of these tremendous upper lights that can't be put into any vessels. Or in the language of the Kabbalah and the Chassidut, Orot the Tohu, lights of Tohu, Shalomaila, which are above, being enclosed in the vessels of Tikkun. I'll explain this in a minute. So from this it comes down after the breaking of the vessels, all of the bad things that are in the world. Okay, let's explain this in the language of human beings, of us. Of the lights of Tohu, the breaking of the vessels, and therefore these lights of Tohu are so great that they can't be put into the vessels of tikkun. Of tikkun. Okay, so let's just a short explanation of what there is in the world. There is in the world a thing called genius, right? Genius. There's a thing in the world called genius. Usually people that are geniuses don't get along with everybody else. They don't get along with everyone else. Simple examples, there was Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a fantastic genius, possibly the greatest genius that ever existed in the history of the world. Could be. And he didn't get along with anybody. Couldn't get along with anyone. Couldn't get along with anybody. Terrible personality, but he was a genius, a super genius, and everybody depended on him. And there's many, many examples of this. That's just one of the most outstanding examples. It's outstanding examples. Okay, but let's translate that into life. Let's translate that into life. People want to be egotists, right? People want to be egotists. People like egotism. What's egotism? Egotism is bad. That's what's called. Egotism is bad. What's good? What's wrong with egotism? Because good is feeling the truth, feeling the creator, feeling that we're being created, feeling how precious we are in the eyes of the creator, and how precious every instant is, and how meaningful every instant is. A person that feels that is never going to be in depression. He's never going to have lust. He knows that if he does what he's supposed to do, that God will provide his needs for him. That's one of the main features of God, that he provides your needs if you do make the proper vessels. Okay, but egotism messes things up. And it gets, exaggerated. You get like the mafia and those people that they're like super, super duper egotists, and they kill people for their egotism, and they murder, but they succeed. They succeed, and they succeed until a certain point comes when they don't succeed. And we see all these nations that rose up, Rome and Greece and all these things. Right? And the egotism, they want for me, I'm going to go get to heaven, I'll kill everybody and gets in my way. Okay, but each one of us Jews, each one of us has all these bad things inside of us, all of them, everything. Nazis and all these things is inside of each one of us. And they take the form of certain aspects of egotism. So a person wants to get rid of this. He wants to get rid of it. Sometimes God sends him a sign. He's always depressed. He's always this. He feels terrible. So that's like a sign from heaven. You got to fix yourself up. Huh? A sign, you have to fix yourself up. God sends him a sign from above. So that a person gets depressed, or he gets addicted, or he gets this. So he thinks that's really the fact that it's a sign from God telling you, get your act together. Get rid of your egotism. Stop being so selfish and making yourself suffer, and you drive yourself crazy. Okay. So let's say a person gets out of that stuff and he's not any of this bad, but he realizes, listen, I can fool myself. I thought that I was perfect, and I realized that thought that I was perfect, that I was my biggest enemy. And suddenly you start to realize that maybe I can be my own enemy. I can be my own enemy. That's called tohu. On one hand, I is a good thing. Egotism is a wonderful thing. That's why God created us. But that I can be our biggest enemy if it gets broken. That's what's called very high lights, pure egotism, but we haven't got the vessels to contain this pure egotism. As soon as we get egotistical, you start like the guy who wins the lottery and he becomes berserk, doesn't know what to do with it. Money. So pure egotism, that's pure life, that's a very good thing. God wants us to be separate. He wants us to be to feel this, and so that we will serve God with our separateness. That's what he wants. But if we misuse it, then that's called sorat. That's called evil. And God sends us all sorts of troubles, if we're lucky, to make us realize that we got to get out of our egotism. So, okay, let's go. Here we go. Orosel yonim, these high lights that they can't be put into vessels. This makes rotzoy, that we want to come close to God. Shehu, and this is kalos nefesh, that we want to become close to the Creator. Shekala tichla or a nefesh v'tistalek min hakelim, that a person wants to go out of himself and get close to God. That's what true, pure egotism is. Mute the kelim, and if you haven't got the vessels to contain this, and he's pashas lamata, that this feeling of wanting to be connected to God can be exhibited in every moment of your life. How you are in your business, how you are with your, but elatistalik lamaila, it goes up to be included in the light of God. There can be a nika lichitzonim. There all of a sudden a person can say, hey, I don't want to be connected to God. I want to be myself. I want to do what I want to do. There can be from this a tremendous, what's called a nurture to the external forces. I'm going to do what I want, even though it's going to destroy me. I'm not going to lose my selfishness. So we see nowadays, people do all sorts of crazy things. They put tattoos and put this just to remind themselves it's me, I. And tattoos, mainly, they're not so destructive. For a Jew, it's forbidden, but it's not so destructive. But people make all sorts of, weird piercings and changing things that just, they won't get back. Now people make sex changes. The main thing is to do something to prevent God from coming in. Prevent God from coming in. That's what's called, you don't have the vessels to receive godliness. So therefore, the lights of Tohu become destructive. Machma she'ein nimshach is not drawn in a shoe, bekelim oros de kedusha. You're supposed to draw this feeling of God into good things in the world. Azai then, mibechinas rotzoi lavad, there's just a desire to come close to God, there can come yanika de chitzonim. A person says, I don't want to come close to God. Kamosha she'achara hislavus. For instance, after a person gets excited about prayer, then he doesn't learn Torah, then all of a sudden what can happen? He can get all of a sudden angry at people, and from this comes out also gasas ruach. A person becomes egotistical. You have to bow down to me. So again, life is good. Egotism in its essence is good. God wants us to feel separate, and he wants us to use that separateness in order to serve God every moment, to be included in God. That being included in God, that's what's called high lights, the desire to become close to God. But if these high lights become broken, in other words, you don't have the vessels, then this feeling of egotism that you think that you're God. I feel I'm God. Because God is reality. That's what God is. And whatever you feel to be the most real, that for you is God. Right? So people that are atheists, that's what I always say, I'll say it again. Atheist, there's no such thing as an atheist. There's an I-theist. He believes that he himself is the ultimate reality, a capital I. And so he has godliness. He's being created, but it's trapped. In the world, he hasn't got the vessels for it, so it becomes trapped. He becomes a yesh, but davar, he becomes an egotist. And he wants to preserve this false egotism at any cost. Elishu Evan Doman, the person becomes like a stone. Kamosha Anuroim, like we can see. I'm sorry. I skipped. I'm sorry. Ha'etzel is that the advice is like this. Im rotz libacha shuv lechad. If you have a feeling of godliness, then bring it down into the world. After this coming, that you feel life, you feel godliness, then you have to bring it into the world. That's the idea of bittul. I'm not going to do what I want. I'm going to do what God wants. Ad lebittul b'metzius ein lo koach kalal. He hasn't got any power to litpa'el b'rishfei eish v'chinas yesh v'davar. He is not a separate entity in himself. He himself doesn't even get excited about God. He's just like what we call a stone. Kamosha anuroim, like we see when a servant comes in front of the king. When he comes very close to the king, then he hasn't got any power to do anything. His battle, because he's totally negated in his whole essence. Mitzara bittul, because of this bittul, yavo, he can come, hashava, this pashat bekelim, then he can be in the vessels in the world. In other words, he says, there is God. I know I'm not God, but what am I supposed to do with this feeling that there's life? I don't know what it is. What is life? So he says, therefore, I'll negate myself to God. I'll learn what it says in the Torah, and whatever God wants me to do, I'll do. That's the whole thing. Total surrender to God. God is creating the world. He wants the world to be a good place. Let me go according to the instructions and to the manufacturer's instruction. By means of this, is completed the upper intention why God wanted to create the world in the first place. Nimsa Shoah comes out. Shapa'ula Shuv, that when coming back into the world, that's after Ratzai going up, this is the Oros Elyonim, this is that even the highest lights of godliness, that you feel alive, you feel yourself, that's above any sort of vessels, you can put it into the vessels. Why? Because that's the whole essence of Judaism, to be surrendered to God, but in this world, in order that there can be chibur, joining of these two things of opposite, wanting to become close to God and wanting to bring God into the world, going up and bringing down, chesed v'gavura, love and fear. There has to be a revelation of something which is above both of them, and that's what's called tiferet. In the mimer we're learning in the morning, it was called joy, happiness. That its source comes from the level of crown, the crown of God, which is above the whole creation. What is this? That by means of this, there's joined the two opposites, up and down, elevation, coming down, etc. Love and fear. Then these upper lights can be put into vessels. What is this tiferet? What is this beauty, this harmony? That's the idea of the Kohen. We're going to see. That's the Torah. This is the idea of Taharas Metzora. That's how the Metzora becomes refined, pure. Zot, this is the Torah, a Metzora Torah. The Torah, by means of the Torah, is the leper becomes pure. Lo Taharat Metzora, the fixing of the person you want to fix yourself up. You want to be, on one hand, excited about life, excited about God, excited about reality. You want to be excited, but on the other hand, you want it to be not in an egotistical way. You don't want it to be out of this world. How do you fix it up? By means of the Torah. Because the main thing of learning the Torah has to be in a way of surrender to the giver of the Torah. Like it says, Nafshi ka'afar l'choltiya, my soul is like dirt to everyone. Petach libi b'toratecha. The Torah is a book that tells us why God creates the world. In the whole 5 books of Moses, it doesn't mention heaven or hell. We believe that there is such a thing. 100% there's heaven and hell. But it's not important. What is really important is bringing God into this physical world. And that's the point. But it can't be done without the Torah. That by means that a person is totally surrendered to the giver of the Torah, and then becomes a vessel for the Torah. That the Jew himself feels that I am going to do whatever the Creator says. That's what's called tiferet, beauty, harmony. Like it says, tiferet zu matan Torah. When God gave the Torah, He made the potential for harmony in the world, to bring godliness in the world. And therefore, the kocha lechaber is the ability to join these two things together of going and coming back. Shegama orot elyonim, even the highest lights of godliness, can be drawn into vessels. And that's this whole idea of tzorat. It comes in his skin when the person realizes that he's not doing it. He's not doing the job properly. He's connecting himself to God. He's connecting himself to truth, to the reality, but he's not bringing it into the world. Something is wrong. He gets angry once in a while. He has a lust once in a while. He becomes depressed once in a while. Al Yadezeh, by means of this, mizbatlin of sharot, when a person connects himself really to the giver of the Torah and learns the Torah, then that negates the possibility of any egotism getting nurture from godliness, which is inside of him. Even since the Oros Elyonim, these upper lights, they're drawn down in below into vessels. Okay, so that's the whole idea of the future redemption by means of the Mashiach. That's why the Mashiach is called a Metzora, is called a leper, and he becomes impure. Because the whole idea of the leper is really tremendously high lights of godliness, telling us what's wrong with the world. And the Mashiach comes to fix it up at Tarasam. He comes to fix it up by means of the Torah. So he's fixing up the whole entire world and bringing godliness into the world, as we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow.